Once we have our Meteor server up and running and we got that app running on localhost 3000 sitting there, I'm just going to go ahead and tuck this away for right now. And I'll close out the packages. We'll fold this folder in right now and go ahead and just look at our sign in, and we can actually we'll open up the app.js too, because that's going to be definitely important. So inside of this app.js, this is where we're going to start putting in some of the code to connect to the Meteor server. First thing we want to do is up at the top, import Meteor and this other thing called create container, and then accounts, all from our React Native Meteor package. Native Meteor package like this. So we installed this earlier in case you didn't remember, and what this is doing is we're including a couple things. First of all, Meteor, which is going to be very important because Meteor has a lot of stuff on it. If you've ever done Meteor programming before, you know that the Meteor object has like a bunch of information, helpful information on there, so we definitely need that. And we also need create container, which is going to change the way that we have the app, like the way we have our app exporting at the bottom. And then we also need accounts, which is going to help us create accounts, like, for our users. Meteor is going to be mostly helpful for like logging users in and getting that all set up. So what we want to do is we get the sign in sitting inside of our render function for this component. What we want is to create a sign-in function at the top level inside of app.js, and then we'll be able to call it inside of sign-in down there. So we want to create this function called sign-in right here, and it's going to take two parameters. The first is email, the second is password. Make this an arrow function, and we're going to put some logic in here in a second, but first let's pass this function down into sign-in. So we'll say sign-in like this is equal to this.signin, and inside of sign-in we can use this new function to put inside of our login function, like right here. Login, sign-in. I know, why didn't we keep the names the same? Sometimes it's better that way so that there's no confusion, but that's definitely a little off there. Alright, so login, inside of our login function, we're going to want to grab the email and password off of our state. So we'll say var email is equal to this.state.email like this, and we'll say var password is going to be equal to the password that the user puts in. So password. And then we can go ahead and call that sign-in function. So we'll say this.props .sign-in email and password. That's what we'll pass in. So we'll save this real quick. So, once that user, puts in their email, puts in their password, and then they hit that sign up button, what's going to happen is it's going to take the email and password off the state, pass it into the function that's coming through the props, sign in, and if we go back to app.js, it's going to run this function right here with the email and the password props coming through. So inside of app.js, inside of this sign-in function more particularly, we can go ahead and do a few things. So the first thing we want to do is add the Meteor object and call a function that's tied to it called login with password, just like this. And we'll say email, password. Those are two parameters we definitely want to pass in. And then the third parameter we want to pass in is a function which will handle any errors or any data coming back with this login password. So we're going to make this an arrow function. So we'll say error data. Make this an arrow function, expand this out a little bit. Inside of here, we're going to basically, I talked about it before, we have the sign in, sign up button. So if this works, like if they're logged in, if they're all good to go, we're going to just send them to the next screen. But if they're not good to go, if they don't have an email inside of our accounts on our server yet, then we're going to create an account for them. And we're going to set that up by using just like a simple if-else statement. So we'll say if error, and we're going to check if the error.reason is equal to user not found, and make sure you get this capital U, and this is exactly as I have it. I'll explain why in a minute. If this is true, make this a triple equals too. If this is true, then we're going to want to say, just in our console, there was no email. And then we're going to want to create that account. So we can say, we can call that accounts object that we have up here, accounts.create user. And we're going to pass in an object that contains the email and the password. And then the second argument here is an error, like handler, and we'll make this an arrow function, and we'll just console log out the error if there is one. Hopefully there is none at this point inside of the function, but there might be. Alright, so why did we break off the error and then the error.reason? Basically, we want to make sure if there's an error coming back, like if there's no error, if they already have an account and they log in, this is going to throw an error if we try and say error.reason, because this is going to come back as null or undefined, and we can't say null.reason. It's not going to work, so it's going to throw us an error. We don't want that. We're going to check if there's an error there to begin with, and then check what the reason is. Now this right here, this error.reason, this statement inside this second if statement, that's a little dangerous. What we're doing right now is we're checking if the string of the reason is equal to that error reason coming back here. That's not necessarily sound, but we're doing a little bit of a hackish thing here. We're just basically checking what the reason is. Like if that reason happens to be that the user is not found and not something else, like wrong password or something, then we want to make a new account. But this could give us some complications. If Meteor changed the way that they were sending back, or the message that they were sending back with the reason. There's definitely a better way to do this, but for this particular example, this is like a good way to do it, I think. And then we'll just have an else statement down here. Sorry, an else statement, and this is going to console log email found if they have one in there. Okay, that's it for this video. We'll start testing this out and maybe adding a few more things in the next video. This is getting a little long, so I'm going to end this here. See you then.